Welcome back, family. Welcome back to another episode of Squad's Night In. Today we are in the nighttime, and we are going to be talking about marijuana. But first, we have Kahil with our fun fact of the week.
Okay, so our fun fact of the week is that there are more public libraries in the United States than there are McDonald's. So take that book and read it.
Interesting.
I tried to work that in, but it didn't work very well.
Look at that, America.
Interesting. So our we're going to be talking about today is the legalization of the marijuana in Canada. Josh, what do you think about that?
Yeah, man. So a couple days ago, they actually just legalized marijuana, I believe, as a whole in the entire country of Canada. And I think it's such a great step forward because of the fact that on the ballot in Florida coming up, they're going to be looking at the legal recreational use of marijuana. So I think it's something that's definitely relevant because it's going to impact us very soon in this upcoming winter election. So, and I also think it's interesting to look at the dynamic of how we pass laws in the U.S., or at least in terms of like marijuana and
Right.
other like, how do you say it, like the illegalization of stuff. I don't know how to put it, but
Delegalization?
yeah, like, I don't know, like just legalization of like substances that used to be illegal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really interesting. So what do you guys think? What's your what's think it's good for Canada?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like a lot of the times when this conversation's kind of brought up, I'm pretty impartial about it. But I do think for the sake of imprisonment and incarceration, we've talked about it a little bit earlier. I do think that it's a big step forward.
Mm-hmm.
I really do, and I think we can use Canada as a really good example, and we can kind of see how it goes. But I do think, like I said, that I think it would be a really, really great step forward.
Yeah.
Wild.
Well,
You got anything on that, Jamie?
I mean, I definitely think this is kind of like a movement. You know what I mean? Like, we talked about Florida having the votes coming up, and you have to wonder in 40 years, are children going to look back and say marijuana was illegal? Or is it is this like some sort of movement like that where all around the world it's just going to be legalized and legalized and
Right, and it is a movement.
turn into an industry?
It really is, and it already is an industry, right?
Yeah.
When we look at the states that have legalized it, I did a research paper on it, and actually it was kind of crazy how big the industry actually was, and it wasn't just for really the sale of marijuana, but actually for marijuana related like products.
Mm-hmm.
And so government could also get in on it. I know people hate that, when the government really gets in on something, but the government can also get in on it because it's essentially like this taxable item that people are willing to almost say screw paying the tax, and that was also part of it. So the government in Colorado was making actually quite a good bit of money, and I think the research was that they could be actually making more as time went on and as more states would legalize it. But it really is a big cash industry, and the government could really get in kind of on the ground floor. And it's kind of shocking to me how the government kind of is like against it.
Yeah.
But it goes also back to the war on drugs. I think that is like the biggest failure in like American politics history. You know what I mean? Like a war on drugs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's. I think it's a great step forward for just in general North America because a lot of the, I guess, countries in Europe have already implemented, like the legalization of some drugs like marijuana, and I feel like they benefited so much, and it's not just drugs too. Like I know in some places, I think in the Netherlands, they also have like legal prostitution, and that's all regulated. And it not only cuts down on things like STDs and things like that, it also I think it helps a lot of people because it's not just this back alley thing, you know. And there's
Right.
also there's this regulation, and I think
For those
it's
who do work in that industry,
Yeah.
it gives them maybe some protection.
yeah, it gives them this opportunity. And people talk about, you know, how the I guess the lower income areas, you know, waste tax dollars and things like that. But I mean, you literally support the fact that you support the fact of putting these people in jail when you're gonna have to use your tax dollars to, you know, keep them in jail.
Right.
And I mean, why would you do that when you could, you know, support the economy by just making something, you know, as simple as marijuana legal, and then it all goes back to, you know, the state or the government, and that goes back to the people. And I mean, it's what do you call it? It's forlorn wages, you know. It's just lost, you know. It doesn't go back in the community. It doesn't help anybody that, you know, these people are in jail. And, you know, one way or another, people are going to, you know, buy this marijuana. And whether it goes overseas to the people who produce it, or, you know, whether it goes somewhere else or in the gangs or things like that, you know, it's not being productive in the community. And I think having Canada show that it can work in North America is a big step forward, because it'll allow other people to realize that marijuana is not just like the shady business that you know is just done with gang dealers.
And while I was saying that we could use Canada as an example, because I really think we do, it's kind of weird because we also don't use the states that we have that have legalized it in some form as an example. I mean, those towns haven't gone to, you know,
It's
crap
insane.
based on it. So if we're not even willing to kind of look at our own states and our communities, I'm kind of hard pressed to believe that society will take a look at Canada and say, hey, this was a success. Yeah. But I really do think that Canada could be this great example.
I was going to add on to that. When Colorado did legalize it, I remember reading that they had so much money, they didn't know what to do with it, so they put it back in schools.
Right.
So if this movement is done right, this could definitely benefit us in the long run like that.
Yeah, and I mean, I've heard the argument, to not use overseas as prime examples for how marijuana use, because I've heard it, the attitude in America and the issues we have to deal with is so different with things like illegal immigration and stuff like that,
right?
And how the source of a lot of this marijuana is different overseas. And I mean, it's happened in Colorado for how many years now? And I mean, they're not super close, but I mean, even in California, I mean, they're right on the border, and it's legal weed, and I don't think they have any problems with it whatsoever. So I mean, how can you keep using that argument that America, it's just not going to work out,
right?
It obviously has.
But that also seems to be, and I hate to kind of delve into like a conversation with politics, but that kind of gets into what the politics of America kind of is. That just won't work for us because we're completely different. Even though, healthcare, universal healthcare, things like that, it's like, well, that can't work for us because, we're a different country, that those are different scales, but it's like, it's not. We are a different country, but that doesn't necessarily mean that things won't work for us. Mm-hmm. The problem is, people have their own beliefs, which you're allowed to have. We're not going against that, but people have their own beliefs, and it's really hard to change someone's kind of mindset on, marijuana and this kind of stigma that it's inherently a bad thing. I think anything, if used in a not healthy way, can be bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That could literally be said about anything. Soda, candy, all this stuff, alcohol. Alcohol is legal, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They literally had a movement to make alcohol illegal, and people fought against that so hard. So why isn't it the same with marijuana?
Right.
And everybody does it, and everybody
yeah.
understands they do it. People know their daughters do it in college,
right.
their sons.
Right.
And they, until I guess it happens to their son or daughter and they get, incarcerated for marijuana, no one's going to do anything.
Exactly. Back to my point, literally people are drinking alcohol and killing people on the road because you're just not you're not making the right decisions when you're doing it. So that's what I'm saying. In moderation, I don't think alcohol is really that much of a problem. But that argument can literally be used about anything. Anything used in a not healthy way can be bad. So that is why it is up to us, and it is up to our government to regulate and kind of police these things and promote. It. I don't think it helps to kind of like have this sort of marijuana is a bad thing kind of stigma, because then it only makes people want to do it more. I think it really, like, people almost inherently have this kind of rebel behavior in them to where like they kind of rebel against things like that. If you make something inaccessible, people tend to want it more. And that's one of the basic principles of economics. If there's a need, if people want something and you provide a lot of it, then the demand kind of goes down. But like when you make it like inaccessible and you kind of cut off the supply, the demand, especially if it's something that's wanted, the demand shoots up. So when you have this kind of mentality when it comes to marijuana and all these different things, it just makes people, I honestly feel, want to do it more. The people that want to do it, they're going to get their hands on it somehow. Let's integrate it into society in a healthy way. And I honestly, I don't see any problem with it.
Yeah, and there's also, like, as me and Jamie went to Canada, and there was also the fact with alcohol, they have the same infrastructure over in Canada with alcohol, where it's completely government regulated, so that you can only get alcohol from these certain government regulated stores. So I mean, it's also it's basically like that, where it's completely government regulated, and it leads to smaller, or I guess less issues with things like underage drinking and overconsumption and things like that, because you can only get it in certain areas. And it could also be said to the lower drinking age. People in America say that if the drinking age is lower, there's bad decisions and things like that. But I mean, in Canada, they have like way less problems with underage drinking and things like that, just because of the fact that the age is lower, and there's no problems like that. There's no there's not this boom of drunk driving and assaults and things like that. And it's crazy to think that all over the world they're using this system, but because we're American, we think the system doesn't work for us, but it works for everybody else, just not for us. It's
Right.
like the metric, and I don't
Right.
even know what the system is called in the U.S.
Right.
Like it's insane that we think we're so special, but we're not. It's insane, but it's whatever. I think it's just a lot of Americans have this elitist mentality that we're completely different from the rest of the world, and we're not.
Right.
And we're, at the end of the day, we're all humans, and we all have this this capacity to advance. But I feel like in America we're just so regressive in how we do things, and I feel like if we just pushed a little bit more for this, I guess, this better legislator, we could, I don't know, kind of like advance in our policies.
Right.
Because right now it's going nowhere fast. But I mean, as we already mentioned, there is the fact that legal marijuana is on the ballot, but I mean, it was on past years, and I don't think it ever got passed. So I mean,
Well, the thing
I
is,
think they've always been close.
yeah.
I mean, I think this time is the first time, and I may be wrong, where it's recreational marijuana is legal. And I think we've always had a problem with young votes. I think this is going to be like the biggest young vote turnout ever with this recreational bill being passed.
Because I mean, maybe medical marijuana didn't really, I guess, interest a lot of young voters, because I mean, it wasn't very relevant to them. Because
We do get in the habit of only caring about things when they are relevant to us. We don't look at the impact that it could have on other people. The problem is where like your views start to differ from other people. So you may not think that it's a bad thing for the other people, but the other people that are out there that are actually voting are like, heck no, we can't have this in our society, because people are going to make bad decisions. People are going to die because of this. even though like I think that couldn't be further from the truth. But you know, like people have these certain beliefs, and it's kind of like when you get in a conversation with somebody that's just not willing to kind of like hear you out. Then it's just kind of like talking to a brick wall.
Yeah, that's true.
And I do think a lot of it does have to do. Let's kind of shift the conversation to voting. Let's kind of take a turn there. I think a lot of it has to do with voter turnout. And we could say voter turnout is really low across the board, but it's higher in the more elderly categories. I mean, they blow the younger categories out of the water, quite literally, when it comes to turning up to the polls. So the people who probably don't want to see this in society are the people that are actually going out to vote. The people who are probably a little bit older and later in life, and you know, they don't want to see this, you know, kind of take over their, you know, neighborhoods and society or whatever. So they're going to get out and they're going to say, heck no, we're going to vote against it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think another big issue, especially with marijuana specifically, is the fact that, like, especially during state elections, is the fact that these laws specifically impact mainly, like, college-age students.
Yeah.
And a lot of these college students are not from Florida, or they're not from, you know, the area where they go to college in. And I feel like that's also a big problem because of the fact that, you know, they're gone in like 4 years. You know,
right.
A lot of this stuff that they vote for necessarily doesn't affect, you know, them later on in life if they don't stay in Florida. So, I mean, I feel like that might also be another deterrent why they don't go out to vote, is because they feel like, you know, I'm only in Florida for 4 years, why should I vote? But I don't think they realize that there's such a large majority of the, like, I guess, of the young voters, that they don't realize that these college voters are a large majority of, you know, the young voters in Florida. And it's a shame because of the fact that most of these young voters in Florida don't necessarily stay in Florida, so it doesn't really affect them as much.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, definitely I definitely had some friends that I'll talk to about maybe politics or stuff, and then they'll just finish off by saying, "Oh, well, I didn't even vote anyway."
Right.
And I'm just kind of like, well, we're kind of talking about this, and you're really defending this politician, but then you didn't vote for him, or they'll be like, "Oh, I voted for Harambe." And I'm just kind of like, okay.
Yeah, it's insane. How many people was it? Wasn't it like 7,000?
Too many.
It was too many people.
And it was, I guess it was a good joke, but
yeah,
like, come on.
It's like, think of like all those people who voted. Like, what could have happened if they showed up to vote for something that actually mattered?
It's kind of like,
you know,
it's kind of like, I'm kind of reminded of like this Mark Twain quote where he was like, if voting it wants something along the lines of like, if voting mattered, they wouldn't let you do it. And so a lot of
people, that's quite profound, actually.
So I know like a lot of people do have that mindset, and I'm not saying they're wrong for that, because I, you know, personally, I have views on the governments and stuff like that.
Right.
But you know, at least I'm like, man, I'll give it a shot.
Right.
You know, I still have that hope.
Right. And we were talking a little bit about it, the young voter turnout problem. It's sometimes voting can seem kind of inconvenient. It's not built in a way that kind of caters to the younger voters. There's, you know, Josh was kind of explaining, you know, he said, you know, if you could vote on your phone, you know, a lot of people would probably do it. I said, my response to that was, it would probably be the first thing that I did in the morning. If on voting day, I had this little alert that said, hey, you know, open up your, you know, official government app or whatever and vote on this election, I would probably do it just because it is convenient for me. I didn't even have to roll out of bed to go vote. But the fact that it's kind of inconvenient, it kind of puts that thought in your head, like, you know, do I really want to go stand in this line forever? And right now it's kind of a midterm election, so it's kind of like a little bit different. The lines are, you know, are probably not going to be that long, but when it comes to the 4-year presidential elections, every 4 years, I mean, it's a big ordeal, and not every voting place is like slammed to the back max with lines, but you are assigned to a voting place, and so maybe your voting place is like slammed. Maybe there are people still waiting at the threshold at the end of the night where like, all right, you guys are it, you're the last votes or whatever. Who wants to do that? You know what I mean? Just to exercise civil liberty, which we are thankful to have. It's just, it's not built in a way that's kind of enticing for us to go out to vote. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And part of it also is, I was telling you, Josh, it's enough to say to someone, hey, your vote matters. But I feel like a lot of times, as a society, we aren't really shown that our votes matter. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, and even going along with that quote about inconvenience and things like that, we're already seeing, this big push with like things like Amazon and, online shipping, and those kind of applications have already like blown up over the past few years because people just want to do stuff from, their home. Like, I could literally go on Amazon and buy, a bag of chips that I could get from the corner store up the street, and I wouldn't feel any bad because, it's the same price, I get free shipping. Why would I walk up the street to get this bag of chips when I could just order it on Amazon? Well, it's things like that.
That's actually a really good point.
I kind of get excited to go vote. Like, it's like kind of like a thing for me. Like, I'm like, man, I get to go get that little sticker.
I mean, I guess the sticker does kind of make it worth it.
I think for our viewers out there, stickers on the laptop. I don't know.
Oh my gosh, they probably won't be able to see it, but this sticker is a good little method of encouragement. But like,
I don't even like it. Could be a smiley face sticker. Like, I would just be like, man, I'm gonna go get that smiley face sticker.
Right.
They had cookies, man.
If only everybody thought.
Right. If only our entire generation thought like that, and then maybe we'd have the highest rate of voter turnout ever. But back to kind of what you were saying about Amazon. I in my economics class, I had to do a project, and me and my partner did a project on the convenience economy, and things exactly like what you're saying. People are willing to spend, and it doesn't even have to be that bag of chips that you buy costs the same amount.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The fact that you didn't have to go get it is worth, even just that little bit more that you might have to spend. And the thing is, we're seeing that this whole sort of convenience economy is so. Think about it like this. I mentioned this kind of in the project when we were up speaking. You could go to the grocery store, buy your groceries, go home and make dinner for the night or whatever, or you could literally open an app on your phone and buy a pizza.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, don't even have to move in it. You have to move to go open the door, and like that's it.
I mean, like now they have
instructions.
Yeah, it's like now
doors open.
Right. You can even do that.
Yeah, it's like now they even have like Uber Eats and like Bite Squad.
Exactly.
Where you literally don't even have like when you say I want to go out and eat, like you don't even have to go out to eat.
Exactly.
You can literally just order like outside food and have it brought to you. You don't have to drive.
And so we're seeing this industry boom because it's all about the convenience. We are willing to pay a little bit more for convenience. That's what it is. I am willing to buy this Amazon Prime membership just so that I can get free shipping, and if I want to buy something, I can go on there and just press a button, and it'll be at my door in 2 days.
Have to think about it.
I don't even have to think about it. I don't have to put gas in my car. I don't have to do all these things just to go get this product that the store may not even have, for Christ's sake. It's brought to me. And so it's, I think in our generation, and I think even in our society, it really is about that convenience factor. And go ahead.
We can mail it, but I mean, my only thought about this is this okay that like we demand so much convenience? Because like when I like go vote, I see people like they go vote and they put suits on just to go vote. Like, should we like be having those values, or do you think they should just be going towards like convenience?
I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, because I mean, like even in like the simplest form, like with credit cards, like a lot of places only accepted cash in the past, but now everything's accepting credit cards.
because again, it's that convenience, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I
Right.
mean, I think it definitely
Mhm.
like enhances the efficiency of a lot of the things we
Right.
do,
Yeah.
and it deletes a lot of error, and I guess it accounts for, I guess our, how could I say it, our like progression towards this state of we want convenience, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that we, account for that, because it's just something that's going to happen whether we like it or not.
Better question: are we naturally patient people?
Yeah,
You know what I
that's
mean?
true.
Are
It's
we
like-
naturally
yeah,
patient?
it's
But
like-
I want to go back to what you said. Like some people actually get in a suit and tie and they get really dressed up because voting. They are doing their civil duty and they get to go out and they get to vote in the at their voting place. Instituting something like being able to vote more conveniently doesn't mean that you wipe out that option completely.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean,
You know what
it's,
I mean?
it's completely okay for you to do that. I just think that, not everybody is like that. Not
Exactly.
everybody, values the same things.
Mhm.
And I mean, you can bring up the argument, well, I'm a true American, I like my right to, vote and, own guns. But not everybody cares about that.
Right.
Not everybody values that. And I don't think they're less people because they don't value that stuff.
Mhm.
It's like, I don't want to bring this up. I was gonna bring up the Miss Dowling story and the flag, the standing for the anthem. But it's like not everybody, values the same thing.
Right.
It's
Well, we could almost link that to our next topic. What Josh is referring to is every day since kindergarten, we would have to stand for the flag and sing the national anthem. So in our senior year, 12th grade, most people just didn't really stand, and they were silent, but they didn't stand. And one of our classmates, they were related to someone who was in the service, and they were really offended about that, and about how we weren't standing.
And I mean, it just goes to the fact that it's not that the people who didn't stand valued America less than she did. It's why should I have to? Because at the end of the day, the national anthem was created to sell flags. Like it wasn't even made
What was
patriotic. Yeah, it was made to sell the flag. Like because they wanted to sell
Yeah.
those flags, so they created the anthem. Like it wasn't made out of like patriotism. It was simply like economics. We have to sell these flags. Let's
Right.
create a song so people can look at the flag and sell it. And I mean that's okay. There are places
My
all are.
my view on this is
I remember the thought that I couldn't connect with, because I went on that whole rant about the story, and I was saying that because we had listened so many times that I don't want to say it lost its effect, and maybe we got kind of numb to it, and that could be almost connecting it to how now people are telling young people to vote so much that it's almost maybe becoming numb. We get the YouTube ads, we get the Facebook ads, and some people are just like, man, I'm so tired of seeing
it's
these
like
ads.
what gets me about the
Yeah.
whole standing for the flag thing, especially like since we were in high school, it's like it's so early in the morning. I'm barely even making it through the classroom door, let alone like standing for the anthem. It's not even like you said, like will you value America any less or anything, but like the way I felt was I stood every day through elementary school and most of middle school and most of high school. Why,
Yeah, like,
I
why
stood
do I have
every
to
day.
keep standing? Like, especially, it ends at high school. Like, do you
Baseball
automatically
games.
just
Right.
hate America after you leave high school?
Right.
Because when I go to work, they don't make me stand for the flag every morning.
Right, that's
when
actually
I go
a very
to
great-
college, they
that's a
don't
great
make me
point.
stand for the flag every morning. Does that mean everybody who's not in high school and below, they just hate America? I doubt anybody who is offended by that stands up every morning, looks at their American flag, in the corner of their room
Exactly.
and says the anthem. I
Right.
doubt they do that. I doubt anyone does
They'll
that.
have you
There's
believe
probably a small minority of people who wake up every morning and say the anthem. Like, do you hate America because you don't do that? No. Like, you've done your time. It's
Right.
like with jail. You've done your time. You've done it for for how many years? You know, like what is it? 18 years. You sang the anthem every day. Like, does it?
Dang,
Like, do you have to? Like,
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, you were bringing up the point. You know how we've probably become somewhat numb to it, numb to the effect of the allegiance and standing for the flag, and how that's kind of transitioning into are these ads that are trying to get young people out to vote, are we just kind of numb to them at this point, because they're through this election cycle they're just kind of slamming it down our throats. They really are. Honestly, I've noticed that. And they're just kind of slamming it down your throat. Get out and vote. Get out and vote. Get out and vote. The old people are really getting out to vote. We are. I saw the AARP commercial that were like that was like
don't vote. Is that
no,
one? Or?
no, not that one, not that one.
Just
But
like, okay,
it was
I
like
get the message.
it was like we are ages 50 something and older, and we are the ones that get out to the polls to vote.
Yeah.
And we need to do that again this election and vote for people who care about lowering prescription drug costs and all the things that the elderly people care about. But that's what the commercial was, and it just seems like this election cycle they are really making this push to get young people and just people in general, but for the most part I've seen trying to get the young people out to vote.
Yeah, there's a lot of it's like, I think on this ballot there was, I think it was something the city was trying to pass to rebuild like a boat dock somewhere. And like, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sorry if I'm being ignorant about this like amendment, but they were trying to rebuild like this boat dock, and they're like, should we fund this? And I'm like, why would I fund my tax dollars to rebuild a boat dock in some part of the city I don't even go to,
Right.
for a boat that I don't even use?
Right.
It's like, why is that on the ballot? Like, I feel like that should be privately funded. Like, why should the city pay for a boat dock for private citizens?
Right.
Was it like for like? Do you know if the dock was?
It was.
What
I
it
don't.
was for?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm
Forgive him for being
ignorant,
right.
but like, it was. They were trying to rebuild a boat dock, and I'm saying it's the only people who really care about that
Right.
are like the old wealthy people who have boats.
Right, or who use that.
Yeah.
And I don't think you're ignorant by having that kind of assumption, because I work at a tennis facility, and I talk to some of the coaches and pros from around, and they always one of them in particular always talks about how we have these city funded tennis courts where these courts, not the hard courts, because they don't cost very much to maintain. They break up a little bit, and you repair them, every however many years they last. But it's the clay courts, and to put clay down on tennis courts costs money, but the city actually pays for this club to run it, and so they can just whatever the clay gets washed away, the city buys more, and it's not like this stuff isn't expensive. You know what I mean? Like when you're paying for it as much as you need to maintain the courts, it's a lot of money. And that's tax dollars going towards funding that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I love to play tennis, but I'm not a member down there. I don't play where they are funding for the courts. So, why should my tax dollars be spent there?
Yeah, that's what I'm
you know
saying.
what I mean?
Like,
So I do get that. And I don't think you're being ignorant by saying, by asking that question, because that could very well be the case.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if it's going to be funded by, like, the state government, I feel like it should be accessible to everybody. Like, I don't feel like I should pay for something that I'm never going to use in like the next 40 to 50 years possibly.
Right.
Like, I think that's something that, like, even if it was like just a boat dock that was free, that everybody could use, you could park your, like, even if you have like a kayak or something, bare minimum, you can go to that boat dock and use it. But like, if it was something like, I'm paying to fund the rebuilding of like a yacht dock or something, in downtown St. Pete. They got enough money. They don't need any of mine.
Right. It's funny, but it's funny how they would be willing to spend money on something like that, but like when it comes to like things for like universal health care and things like that, they're like, whoa, that's
why would I spend
that's
money?
My money. What are you?
Yeah,
I'm not.
I feel like the only thing, like the people who complain about taxes the most are the people who can afford to pay them.
Exactly.
It's just like you making like $500,000 a year, and you're complaining about like a $2 increase
Right.
on sales tax to fund like a community project.
Right.
It's like, come on. Like, you can't even donate $2 at the at Publix to give to
Right.
like a food
I
drive.
already
Right.
donated today.
it's like, dog, you just bought like $800 worth
Yeah,
of food.
it's
like,
like-
you can't donate $1.
It's like, I understand, like, if you're buying like $8 worth of food and the person
Yeah.
asks you and you're like man, you see like I'm using coupons and
Yeah,
but if you're
right.
buying like
I'm like, dog, you just bought like 8 ribeye steaks.
yeah.
Like, come on, dog. It's $2 to help
Right.
your community. You're like, well, I don't know where it's going. Well, I'm like, dog, I just told you where it's going. It's going
Right.
to the St. Pete Free Clinic. Like, it doesn't get any more local than that. Like, come on.
Right.
Yeah.
It's insane.
It could be
dog.
embezzling it.
Yeah, it's insane. I don't.
St. Pete Clinic.
What are you gonna
No
do?
one's it.
Well,
I felt like we got a little bit off topic there, but
Well,
it was,
I think
it was
final
good.
thoughts. Final thoughts.
yeah. Final thoughts. Florida's.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not really. I haven't thought much about anything.
Man, I think my thought is just once we get close to it, I'm sure you're gonna be seeing lots of my Facebook friends, lots of young people, lots of memes going around about going to vote for the weed and I think it's gonna
if there's
be
not a huge
big
turnout
turnout.
for this, I'm just gonna be
it's
like
hopeless.
incredibly
Yeah.
disappointed.
So you're
Like-
saying this is your metric. So if there's
Yeah.
not a good
Yeah.
turnout for this, then there
Just-
will never be a good
Yeah, if
turnout
young
ever.
people
No.
can't turn out to legalize like marijuana, something that they're already doing
Passionate
illegally,
about
if they can't turn out for that, then honestly, what is going to drive them to actually turn out?
Better stickers.
Yeah,
Better- We want better stickers.
better stickers at the polls.
Okay, I
Everybody,
want
let's get that on
fresh
the ballot
baked
for
cookies.
2019.
Fresh coffee. Okay. I want more quality.
Oh my gosh. Okay, you're alienating the people who already provide these things.
Yeah,
for us.
they are very nice at the voting center. I have to say.
Okay, so
But- I would like cookies.
are we done here? All right, guys. So that was an episode of Squad's Night In. Like always, don't forget to like this video. Please comment something down below so that we have some insight on what you guys want us to talk about. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and this was Squad's Night In.
Let us know.